How many times have you been part of this audience that had to go through or sit through a presentation or a speech which was very boring, long, very drabby, where the presenter's voice is extremely drony, or he has inundated the entire speech with very technical data or facts that are really, really letting your mind wander, or you're just not interested in the speech? Happens to us all the time, right? How many times have you sat in the audience thinking, hmm, what did I have for dinner last night? Happens to us all the time, right? Which means that the very first minute of your speech is so critical. In fact, studies show that the first lapse of attention happens midway through the first minute itself. Therefore, to grab the attention of your audience, it is critical that we use some strategies so that we continue to engage and captivate our audience. In a survey of pro presenters, there were a few questions asked about how critical it is to do presentations at workplace or even in schools. About 70% agreed that presentations are very, very critical to their success. About 63% think that slide based presentations are boring and ineffective. And 33% are so nervous that they won't be able to captivate their audience at all. On the other hand, 46% of the audience, which means almost half the audience, admitted to doing something else while a presentation was going on. Some of them were either texting a message, checking their emails, surfing the internet, or simply falling asleep. Which is why hooks in a presentation are extremely critical to grab the attention of the audience. Imagine that on a hot summer day, you decide, I'm going to go fishing today. You need to carry your fishing rod, some bait, maybe a bucket, a net, and of course, you'll need your boat. You will then need to match your hook onto your bait and wait for the fish to bite. Once the fish bites, you will then reel it in and you will catch your fish. The same concept is used in a presentation or a speech to engage or captivate the audience so that they get hooked onto your speech and they get engaged so much into your speech that you can reel them in. That concept or that strategy to engage with the audience is therefore known as hooks. And we'll, in this segment, go through several strategies in order to engage with our audience. Now, engaging with the audience is determined by three key elements: how well you structure your presentation, how well you understand your audience, and how well you deliver the information. In this segment, we will focus on engaging strategies on how to hook the audience. So let's take a scenario where maybe in a same presentation or a same speech that is being delivered to the same audience, there is one person who perks you up within those first 5 minutes. Well, the other one just literally puts you to sleep. One is boring, drab, full of facts and figures, and one gets you very excited about the idea or the theme of the presentation. How does this presentation seem so different? Let's get into some strategies on using hooks to deliver effective presentations. Setting up your presentation as a story can help engross an audience. And building the information you deliver into a narrative with a lot of drama in it will keep them completely hooked or riveted. No matter how technical or dense your data might be, the audience is going to be drawn in. But besides using powerful stories or making those connections through stories, there are several other techniques also that you could use in order to hook your audience. I'm going to be showing you one such example. The 2015 world champion Mohammad Katani, in his speech "The Power of Words," uses different forms of um, hooking strategies. One of them I'm going to show you right now is using a physical object or a prop. Now, a physical object or a prop, when people least expect it or they don't know what you're going to do with it, within the first 10 seconds, Mohammad Katani grabs the attention of the audience and they start wondering what he is going to do with it. After that, he asks them a provocative question, which just leads to peals of laughter. And using humor, he engages further with the audience. And he does more. But let's get started with what he does so far.
What?
You can see that within the first 10 seconds of the speech, he has already grabbed the attention of the audience. They are intrigued with what is he going to do with this prop. And he's very casual, calm, collected, and in complete command of the stage on which he's standing. Now, I'm going to continue with the video to show you what else he does.
Oh, you all think smoking kills? Let me tell you something. Do you know that the amount of people dying from diabetes are 3 times as many people dying from smoking? Yet if I pulled a Snicker bar, nobody would say anything. Do you know that the leading cause of lung cancer is not actually a cigarette? It's your DNA. You could smoke for years and nothing will ever happen to you. This whole war against smoking is just to restrict the farming of tobacco. Mr. Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters and guests, I use these arguments, even though I just made them up.
Before I get into the next strategy to use hooks, let's look at that video for a second and think about and analyze it a little bit. So Mohammad Khatani uses the stage very easily. He has impeccable timing. He walks and speaks very slowly. He throws in a lot of other hooks like statistics and data and facts, and you don't even realize how engaged and riveted you are in the conversation, that all the data was made up, and then he uses that to make fun of the situation and everybody laughs. This is only about 30 seconds into the speech, and already people are so engaged in what he has to say. There are other strategies, and we'll move on to the next section. The next one is asking a question, a very effective way to grab the attention of an audience. So we saw in the previous video how Mohammad Khatani uses several strategies of using hooks. A couple of those were asking questions. The first question was a very provocative question, and then he continues to ask some questions about health. Similarly, asking a question then becomes a very effective way of getting the audience engaged. You pose a question to the audience and suddenly they wake up and they know that the question is being addressed to them and they will respond to you. So I'm going to show you another video where you will see American social psychologist, author and speaker Amy Cuddy explaining the concept of body language and how showcasing how power posing, standing in a posture of confidence even when you don't feel confident, can affect your testosterone and cortisol levels in the brain and might even have an impact on your chance of success. Sounds like a deep and heavy topic, doesn't it? But she does it so beautifully. She begins by calling out and asking a question about a posture, and suddenly an audience member sits up because he becomes very conscious that the question has been posed to him. She further goes on to make all her points very effectively by using images and visuals and keep the audience interested. So let's get right into it.
I want to ask you to right now do a little audit of your body and what you're doing with your body. So how many of you are sort of making yourself smaller? Maybe you're hunching, crossing your legs, maybe wrapping your ankles. Sometimes we hold on to our arms like this. Sometimes we spread out. I became especially interested in nonverbal expressions of power and dominance. And what are nonverbal expressions of power and dominance? Well, this is what they are. So in the animal kingdom, they are about expanding. So you make yourself big, you stretch out, you take up space, you're basically opening up. It's about opening up. And this is true across the animal kingdom. It's not just limited to primates, and humans do the same thing. So they do this both when they have power sort of chronically, and also when they're feeling powerful in the moment. And this one is especially interesting because it really shows us how universal and old these expressions of power are. This expression, which is known as pride, Jessica Tracy has studied, she shows that people who are born with sight and people who are congenitally blind do this when they win at a physical competition. So when they cross the finish line and they've won, it doesn't matter if they've never seen anyone do it, they do this. So the arms up in the V, the chin is slightly lifted. What do we do when we feel powerless? We do exactly the opposite. We close up, we wrap ourselves up, we make ourselves small. We don't want to bump into the person next to us. So again, both animals and humans do the same thing. And this is what happens when you put together high and low power. So what we tend to do when it comes to power is that we complement the other's nonverbals. So if someone's being really powerful with us, we tend to make ourselves smaller. We don't mirror them, we do the opposite of them.
Isn't that very interesting? You can see that Amy Cuddy not only explains the concept of the power pose so beautifully through visuals and images, she also demonstrates it by putting her hands up and showcasing what she's talking about, or even closing her arms to showcase what happens when you don't feel very confident. So these are two very effective ways, because there are a lot of people in the audience who could be very visual learners or visual people, and for them a concept can be explained best when you actually demonstrate it. So demonstrating a point through images, visuals, and even your hands is an effective way to engage with the audience. Now, using statistics that is relevant to the topic makes a presentation even more interesting. How many times have we sat through presentations where there's a lot of detail, a lot of facts, a lot of data, but it's really boring and drabby and your brain just doesn't retain the information? But using statistics, dramatic facts, data in an effective way that is relevant to the topic is a very, very effective way of capturing or engaging with the audience. I'm going to show you a video now from the hit series The Newsroom, where actor Jeff Daniels plays the role of a very brash news anchor named Will McCoy, who's disillusioned by America's decline on intellectual, industrial, and philosophical levels. And he uses a lot of dramatic facts and statistics to make his point. And he does it in a very rant style of delivery. And he stuns an assembly of Northwestern University students when he launches a tirade about the United States and how it has got a long way to go before it claims to be the greatest country in the world again. Now you can see how engaged and completely enamored the audience is by his speech. They are completely in shock and they're very stunned. And how does he do it? Let's watch.
There's some things you should know, and one of them is there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies.
So we can see that the powerful way in which he presents his point using fingers, point number 1, point number 2, point number 3, he clearly details what statistics and data he wants to use to make his point. So this is again a very effective strategy. Now let's move on to one of the most favorite strategies that everybody loves, which is humor. Something that is not easy for all of us, but if you practice it enough or if you plug it in the right place, it can be extremely effective. So what I'm going to show you now as an example of using humor as a hook is where Jim Carrey, the very famous actor and comedian, he's speaking at a university, talking to a bunch of students at a commencement speech, and he's trying to make a very serious point about planting a seed. But he then uses a punchline to make humor as one of his hooks to capture the audience. Let's take a look.
I'm here to plant a seed today, a seed that will inspire you to move forward in life with enthusiastic hearts and a clear sense of wholeness. The question is, will that seed have a chance to take root, or will I be sued by Monsanto and forced to use their seed?
In case you don't know what Monsanto is, it's an organization or a American company that is famous for creating GMOs or genetically modified organisms, and is not very popular with the environmentalists. So Jim Carrey uses a very interesting way to communicate a very critical point that is relevant for students. At the same time, he also uses a punchline to kind of bash at an anti-environmentalist organization. What is also interesting in his speech is the reference to the context. The students that he is addressing is the Maharishi University, which is famous for doing a lot of Ayurvedic alternative treatments. So the concept of environment and health is so pertinent to this particular speech, and he uses that punchline so effectively. So definitely using humor, also self-deprecating humor, where sometimes you laugh at yourself, is also a very good way to actually engage with the audience. Now, we've talked about a very, very critical strategy right in the beginning, which is stories, and how stories are probably one of the most important and the most easy and effective way to hook an audience. So let's talk a little bit more about stories. Stories. No matter how dry your subject is, you need to connect with your audience using stories. So, what is it about stories anyway? Anthropologists have been telling us that storytelling has been central to human existence for ages. People have been connecting and communicating with each other using stories. The human brain is not designed to, digesting facts and statistics and numbers all the time. If you want to persuade somebody, if you want to get a buy-in, you've got to connect with them emotionally through stories. Also, when telling your stories, make sure that you move your body, that you act it out, make it very vivid and make it very visual. Move your audience to change their behavior depending on what emotion it is. If it is a very sad or a very serious situation, or if it's a very exciting, inspiring kind of a situation, based on that emotion, showcase it through your acting and through your body language. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Then bring in your punchline. Get people to buy into your message. The story makes the point that appeals to the limbic part of the brain. That part of the brain that is responsible for thinking and movement and taking decisions. It stores and includes emotions, memories, and stimulation. So make sure that whatever your message is, it is appealing to the limbic part of the brain. Now, I'm going to be showing you two videos. The first one is that of Sir Ken Robinson, a British author, speaker, and an international advisor to the education industry, who makes a very entertaining and profoundly moving case for creating an education system that nurtures rather than undermines creativity. The second video is that of Jim Carrey. Same speech as before that we saw before in the humor section, where he's addressing the students of the Maharishi University, and he talks about how his father did not take any chances in his life, and he used that as an example to conduct his life differently, and he says it beautifully using a story. So let's take a look at both of these stories.
I had a great story recently, I love telling it, of a little girl who was in a drawing lesson. She was 6 and she was at the back drawing, and the teacher said this little girl hardly ever paid attention, and in this drawing lesson she did. And the teacher was fascinated. She went over to her and she said, "What are you drawing?" And the girl said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher said, "But nobody knows what God looks like." And the girl said, "They will in a minute." What these things have in common, you see, is that kids will take a chance. You know, if they don't know, they'll have a go. Am I right? They're not frightened of being wrong. Now, I don't mean to say that being wrong is the same thing as being creative. What we do know is, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. If you're not prepared to be wrong.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
You can see how both the stories were very different, but they both appeal to the limbic brain. And you can see that with the response that the audience gave, whether they were laughing or they were applauding. And that's really such a powerful and effective way to communicate and capture your audience. Now, I said earlier also, whenever you are relating a story or communicating a story, make sure you put your body to it. So let's talk a little bit about body language. Body language includes so many non-verbal cues. And this is a very good example of how Varun Sivaram, who is a Rhodes Scholar and a Stanford graduate, participating in a Oxford debate, talks about the exact same remember I showed you a video earlier of Jeff Daniels in the hit series Newsroom talking about why America is not the greatest country in the world. And he uses the same argument, but as a debater with a group of opponents, he uses the stage, his body language, his eye contact, his sense of courtesy for his opponents, but relates his points very powerfully. Let's take a look at how he does that.
Will McAvoy, fictional TV anchor on Aaron Sorkin's HBO series The Newsroom, opens the pilot in response to an innocuous question from a college student. Why is America the greatest country on earth? Says Will, there is absolutely no evidence to support the claim that America is the greatest country on earth. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in maths, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of citizens incarcerated per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies.
Now that was a very, very effective presentation where you could see that Varun is using the entire stage, using his fingers to make a point, using his eye contact, making sure he's looking at everybody in the audience, and using his space really well. So these are very, very non-verbal cues which are very, very essential in capturing the attention of the audience. But along with the body language, you need to also focus a lot on voice modulation. So our next video is on voice modulation and using a demonstration. It is very important to not just put your body and behind it, but you need to also use your voice the right way in order to effectively engage with the audience. Here is an example of Julian Treasure, who is a sound expert. In his very famous TED Talk, How to Speak So That People Want to Listen, demonstrates the how-tos of powerful speaking from by using some of these very handy vocal exercises to tips on how to speak with empathy. Watch how he engages an entire audience on this topic. Let's take a look.
Warm up your voice. Actually, let me show you how to do that. Would you all like to stand up for a moment? I'm going to show you the 6 vocal warm-up exercises that I do before every talk I ever do. Anytime you're going to talk to anybody important, do these. First, arms up, deep breath in, and sigh out, like that. One more time. Very good. Now we're going to warm up our lips, and we're going to go bo, 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 bo. Very good. And now, just like when you were a kid. Now your lips should be coming alive. We're going to do the tongue next with exaggerated la, 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 la. Beautiful. You're getting really good at this. And then roll an R. That's like champagne for the tongue. Finally, and if I can only do one, the pros call this the siren. It's really good. It starts with we and goes to or. The we is high, the or is low. So you go wee, or wee. Fantastic. Give yourselves a round of applause. Take a seat. Thank you.
As you can see how effectively he demonstrates how to use your voice effectively. What better way to convince an audience but to actually show them and get them to do it with you. You can notice that some of the exercises he did sounded so childish, but there was a bunch of some 100, 200 adults who stood up in this very beautiful auditorium and followed his instruction and were completely engaged in what he was trying to say. So voice modulation and using a demo are very, very critical in actually engaging with the audience. So in conclusion, stories are recognizable patterns, and in those patterns, we try to find meaning. We use stories to make sense of our world and to share our understanding with others. Make relentless connections with your listeners, with empathy and with a clear goal to understand. Convey your points, appealing to the limbic brain so that your audience gets reeled in. Ask questions. Give facts and data so that the listener buys into your why. Make your presentation more effective using all of these hook strategies that we discussed. Thank you.